The cold bit deep into Nathaniel Harper's bones as he pressed his shoulder against the heavy oak doors of the abandoned church. Snow, already beginning to pile against the threshold like nature itself, conspired to seal them inside. His bride stood beside him, her green hands covered in flour-dusted fabric from her wedding dress, helping push the doors shut against the howling blizzard that had turned their wedding night into something far different than either had imagined. The ancient hinges groaned as the doors finally clicked into place, and Nathaniel dropped the iron bar across them, sealing out the storm and the world beyond. "That should hold," he said, his breath visible in the frigid air of the old church. He turned to look at his wife, really look at her for the first time since they had fled the ceremony. Kira stood there in a dress his mother had sewn from salvaged fabric, her green skin stark against the white lace that wrapped around her powerful shoulders. Her small tusks caught the dim light from the few candles they had managed to keep lit during their desperate run through the snow. Her pointed ears twitched as she listened to the wind battering the walls, and her amber eyes reflected wariness and something else he could not quite name. "I did not expect our wedding night to involve being trapped in a church," Kira said, her voice carrying that directness he had come to recognize in their brief courtship. She pulled the veil from her head, and her black hair tumbled down past her shoulders, dusted with snowflakes that were rapidly melting. Nathaniel let out a breath that was half laugh, half exhausted sigh. "To be fair, I did not expect a blizzard to roll in during the ceremony either." The sky was clear this morning. "Mountain weather changes fast," Kira said, moving away from the doors to survey their surroundings. The church had been abandoned for years, ever since the old priest had died and no replacement had been sent from the capital. The pews were mostly intact, though dust covered everything and the windows had long since lost their glass, replaced with wooden boards that rattled in the wind. "At least we have shelter." "And each other," Nathaniel added, then immediately felt foolish for saying something so obvious and sentimental. Kira glanced at him, and he thought he saw the corner of her mouth twitch upward. "Yes, that is the point of marriage, is it not?" They stood in awkward silence for a moment, the reality of their situation settling over them like the snow accumulating outside. They had married hastily, driven by circumstance as much as affection. Nathaniel's farm had been struggling, and when Kira had appeared at his door 3 months ago, injured and starving after being cast out from her clan for refusing to participate in a raid on human settlements, he had made a choice that changed both their lives. He had taken her in, nursed her back to health, and somewhere in the long summer evenings working the fields together, something had grown between them that neither had quite known how to name. "We should check the supplies," Nathaniel said, practical concerns overriding the strange intimacy of the moment. He had brought a pack with him to the ceremony, more out of frontier habit than any expectation they would need it. "We might be here until morning at least." Kira nodded and moved to help him inventory what they had. The pack yielded some bread, cheese, a flask of water, and a wool blanket. Not much, but better than nothing. Nathaniel also had the small tinderbox he never went anywhere without, and there was old wood stacked near what had once been the priest's quarters. "I will get a fire going," Nathaniel said, moving toward the small hearth near the back of the church. "Can you see if there are any more blankets or cloth we can use?" Kira moved through the church with the efficient grace he had come to admire, her wedding dress rustling as she searched through old cupboards and chests. She returned with a moth-eaten tapestry and 2 threadbare blankets that smelled of mildew but would provide some warmth. As Nathaniel coaxed flames from the dried wood, the temperature in the small church began to rise incrementally. It would never be warm, not with the wind howling through gaps in the walls and under the doors, but it would be survivable. He arranged their meager supplies near the fire and spread the blankets out on the floor. Kira settled down near the flames, her wedding dress pooling around her. She looked at it with an expression that might have been amusement or frustration. This dress was not made for camping. No, Nathaniel agreed, sitting down across the fire from her, but you look beautiful in it. She met his eyes, and he saw surprise there. In 3 months of living together, working together, he had been careful with his words. Compliments had been rare, practical observations more common. They had agreed to marry because it made sense, because it solved problems for both of them. The law of the frontier territories was loose enough that such a marriage could be recorded without too many questions. But they had never really discussed what their marriage would mean beyond the practical. "You do not have to say such things," Kira said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I know I do not have to," Nathaniel said, "but it is true, you are beautiful." Kira looked away, her green cheeks darkening in what he realized was a blush. "Humans do not usually think so. Orcs are monsters to your people, beasts." "You are not a monster," Nathaniel said firmly. "And anyone who thinks so is a fool." "Your neighbors think so," Kira pointed out. "That is why we had to have the ceremony in this abandoned church with no witnesses except old Thomas, and he only agreed because you saved his barn from fire last year." Nathaniel could not argue with that. The disapproval of his neighbors had been palpable when word spread that he had taken in an orc. When he announced he intended to marry her, several families had stopped speaking to him entirely. Old Thomas, the only one who had agreed to stand witness, had done so more out of debt than approval. "What they think does not matter," Nathaniel said. "We have done nothing wrong." "Have we not?" Kira asked, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. "I have doomed you to a life as an outcast among your own kind. You could have married a human woman had human children been accepted." "I did not want a human woman," Nathaniel said, then hesitated, realizing how that sounded. "I mean, I did not want anyone else. I wanted you." Kira was quiet for a long moment, her strong hands folded in her lap. "Why?" It was such a simple question, but Nathaniel found himself struggling to answer. How could he explain that it was the way she had stood despite her injuries that first day, refusing to beg but unable to hide her desperation? How could he describe the feeling of watching her work alongside him, never complaining, learning the rhythms of farm life with determined focus? How could he put into words the sound of her rare laughter when his old rooster had chased him across the yard, or the way his house had felt less empty with her presence in it? "Because you are kind," he said finally, "and strong, and honest. Because when you work, you put your whole heart into it. Because you have never lied to me or pretended to be something you are not. Because when I wake up in the morning, I am glad you are there." Kira's eyes glistened, and she blinked rapidly. "That is more reason than I expected." "Did you expect less?" Nathaniel asked. "I expected you married me because it was practical," Kira admitted. "Because I can help with the heavy work on the farm. Because having a wife, even an orc wife, gives you certain legal protections in the territory. I thought it was a transaction." Nathaniel felt something twist in his chest. "Is that why you agreed? Because it was practical?" "At first," Kira said, her honesty as unflinching as always. "I had nowhere else to go. My clan cast me out. Other human settlements would have killed me on sight. You offered safety and food and a place to belong. Of course I agreed." "At first," Nathaniel repeated, catching the qualification. "And now?" Kira looked directly at him, and in her amber eyes he saw vulnerability that she rarely showed. "Now I wake up before dawn and watch you sleep, and I think about how you took me in when you had every reason to turn me away. I think about how you taught me to read in the evenings, even though you were exhausted from working the fields all day. I think about the way you asked me to marry you, so nervous your hands were shaking, as if I might refuse. I think about how you have never once treated me like I am less than you, like I am a monster or a burden. And I realize that somewhere between arriving at your door and standing in this church, I stopped thinking of this as a practical arrangement. What do you think of it as now? Nathaniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I think of it as terrifying, Kira said with a rough laugh. Because I care about you, Nathaniel Harper. I care about what happens to you and whether you are happy and whether I can be a good wife to you, and I do not know how to do this. Orcs do not court like humans. We do not have these long conversations about feelings. We fight together, and that is how we know we are compatible. But we are not fighting anything right now except the cold and the dark. We are fighting isolation, Nathaniel said. We are fighting prejudice and loneliness, and the assumption that different kinds of people cannot build something good together. Kira considered this. That is a different kind of battle, but a battle nonetheless, Nathaniel said. And I would rather fight it with you than face anything else alone. The wind rattled the walls of the church, and snow hissed against the boards covering the windows. The fire crackled between them, and Nathaniel realized he was cold despite the flames. He pulled his jacket tighter. You should come closer to the fire, Kira said. You are shivering. I am fine, Nathaniel said automatically. Nathaniel, Kira said, and there was fondness in her voice that made his name sound different. We are married now. We do not have to maintain a polite distance. She was right, of course. They had been so careful during the months of her living in his house, maintaining separate rooms, always chaperoned by propriety even though there was no one around to judge them. But they were married now, and the temperature was dropping as the night deepened. Nathaniel moved around the fire to sit beside her, and Kira unfolded one of the blankets to wrap around both their shoulders. Her body was warm against his side, warmer than a human would have been. Orcs ran hot, he had learned, their bodies better adapted to cold climates than his own. Better? She asked. Much, Nathaniel admitted. The combination of the fire and her warmth was already driving the chill from his bones. He could smell the soap she had used to wash her hair, something floral his mother had given her. Underneath, that was her own scent, earthy and clean. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm. It was a companionable quiet, the kind that came from people who were comfortable with each other. But Nathaniel's mind was racing with questions he had never dared ask during their courtship. Kira, he said finally. Tell me about your clan. You have never spoken much about them. She stiffened slightly against him, and he worried he had overstepped, but then she let out a long breath and relaxed. There is not much to tell that would make sense to you, she said. Orc clans are not like human families. We are organized around strength and glory. The strongest lead and everyone else follows or challenges. My clan was relatively small, maybe 40 members. We moved with the seasons, following game and looking for opportunities. Opportunities to raid, Nathaniel asked carefully. Sometimes, Kira admitted. We raided human settlements, yes, took food and supplies and weapons. Sometimes we fought other orc clans over territory. It is what orcs do, what we are expected to do. But you refused, Nathaniel said. I refused to raid a specific settlement, Kira corrected. A farming village near the northern border. I had scouted it and seen that they were struggling, that they had children who were already hungry. Taking from them would have meant death for some of those families. I told my clan leader we should find a different target. He said I was weak, soft. That I had spent too much time observing humans and had forgotten what it meant to be orc. What happened then? Nathaniel asked, though he could guess. He challenged me to fight him to prove my strength, Kira said. I knew I could not win. He was bigger, more experienced. So I refused the challenge. In orc culture, that is the ultimate shame. It marks you as a coward. I was cast out immediately. No trial, no second chance, just exile. I am sorry, Nathaniel said. Do not be, Kira said firmly. I made my choice. I would make it again. Those children did not deserve to starve so my clan could prove its strength. But it has consequences. I can never go back. If I encounter my old clan again, they would likely kill me to erase the shame of my existence. That seems cruel, Nathaniel said. It is orc law, Kira said with a shrug. Just as your human laws can be cruel. There are places in your territory where orcs are killed on sight, no questions asked. Where orc children are considered monsters from birth. Neither of our peoples are innocent. Nathaniel could not argue with that. He had grown up hearing stories about savage orcs, about raids and violence and brutality. It was only meeting Kira that had complicated those simple narratives. She was capable of violence, yes. He had seen her kill a wolf that threatened his chickens with her bare hands, but she was also capable of gentleness, of patience, of mercy. You miss it? He asked. Your clan? Kira was quiet for a long moment. I miss certain things. I miss the songs we sang around the fire at night. I miss the feeling of belonging to something larger than myself. I miss my sister, who was kind even when others were not. But I do not miss the constant fighting, the endless proving of strength, the casual cruelty. So yes and no. Do you think your sister is safe? Nathaniel asked. Probably, Kira said. She is strong and smart. She will survive. She may even lead the clan someday, but I will likely never see her again, and that is a price I have to accept. There was grief in her voice, old and deep. Nathaniel reached out and took her hand, her green fingers strong in his pale ones. She looked down at their joined hands with something like wonder. You have given up so much, he said. So have you, Kira pointed out. Your neighbors hate you now. Your standing in the community is destroyed. All because you chose to help me. I would make the same choice again, Nathaniel said, echoing her earlier words. Would you? Kira asked. Even knowing what it would cost, Nathaniel thought about the isolation of the past months, the cold shoulders and hostile glares. He thought about his mother's tears when he told her about the wedding, her fear for his safety and his future. He thought about the farmers who had refused to help him with his harvest, leaving him and Kira to struggle alone. It had been hard, harder than he had expected. But he also thought about the morning he had come down to find Kira had already started breakfast, humming tunelessly to herself as she cooked. He thought about the evening they had spent repairing the barn roof together, working in comfortable rhythm. He thought about the time he had been sick with fever and she had sat up all night to keep cool cloths on his forehead, her face tight with worry. He thought about the way his house felt like a home now instead of just a place to sleep. Yes, he said simply. I would. Kira's grip on his hand tightened. You are either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both, Nathaniel said with a slight smile. Definitely both, Kira agreed, and this time there was no mistaking the warmth in her voice. They lapsed into silence again, but it felt different now, deeper. Nathaniel found himself hyper-aware of everywhere their bodies touched, the weight of her shoulder against his, the way their knees pressed together under the blanket. It was intimate in a way that both thrilled and terrified him. Nathaniel, Kira said after a while, can I ask you something? Anything, he said. Are you afraid of me? The question surprised him. No, why would I be afraid of you? Because I am stronger than you, Kira said matter-of-factly. I could hurt you easily if I wanted to. Most humans are afraid of orcs because of that. But you do not want to hurt me, Nathaniel said. No, Kira agreed. But how do you know that? How can you be sure? Nathaniel considered the question seriously. I suppose I cannot be absolutely sure, but I trust you. You have had plenty of opportunities to hurt me over the past months, and you have never once done so. You are gentle with the animals, patient with the plants, kind to me. Your actions have shown me who you are. Actions can be deceptive, Kira said. They can be, Nathaniel agreed. But yours have been consistent. That means something. Kira turned to look at him fully, shifting under the blanket so they were facing each other. The firelight played across her green features, highlighting the sharp planes of her face, the gleam of her small tusks. I need you to understand something. In orc culture, we do not speak of love the way humans do. We speak of choosing, of standing with someone, of fighting beside them. When I agreed to marry you, I chose you, Nathaniel Harper. I chose to stand with you against whatever comes. I chose to build a life with you. That is not a choice I made lightly, and it is not a choice I will unmake. Nathaniel felt emotion swell in his chest, overwhelming and unexpected. I chose you too, Kira. I am choosing you right now. I will choose you tomorrow and every day after that. Even when it is hard, Kira asked. Especially when it is hard, Nathaniel said. Kira leaned forward, and for a heart-stopping moment Nathaniel thought she was going to kiss him. But instead she rested her forehead against his, an orc gesture of intimacy he had read about but never experienced. Her skin was warm against his, her breath steady and calm. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me as a person and not a monster, for giving me a home when I had nowhere to go, for standing beside me in that church today even though you knew what it would cost, for sealing these doors and choosing to spend this night talking with me instead of treating our marriage as a transaction. Thank you." "You do not need to thank me," Nathaniel said, his own voice rough with emotion. "You have given me just as much, more maybe. Before you came, I was just going through the motions of living. Now I have a reason to wake up in the morning." They stayed like that, foreheads pressed together, breathing the same air, until the fire began to die down and Nathaniel had to pull away to add more wood. The interruption broke the intensity of the moment, and they settled back into their previous position, wrapped in the blanket together. "Tell me about your family," Kira said. "You have mentioned your mother but never your father." "He died when I was 12, Nathaniel said. "Fever took him one winter. It was just me and my mother after that. She remarried a few years ago, moved to a settlement 3 days' ride from here. She wanted me to come with her, but I wanted to keep the farm. It is all I have left of my father." "She did not approve of me," Kira said. "It was not a question." "She was afraid," Nathaniel corrected. "Afraid of what would happen to me, afraid I was making a mistake, but she also taught me to judge people by their actions, not their appearances. I think she will come around eventually." "I hope so," Kira said. "I would like to know her. She made this dress for me even though she disapproved. That tells me she has kindness in her." "She does," Nathaniel agreed. "She is just scared. Change is frightening." "Everything is frightening if you think about it too much," Kira said. "The sky could fall. The earth could open up. The crops could fail, but we cannot live our lives in fear of what might happen." "Is that orc wisdom?" Nathaniel asked with a smile. "That is my wisdom," Kira said. "Hard-earned through many mistakes." "Tell me about a mistake," Nathaniel said. "Something foolish you did when you were young." Kira laughed, and the sound filled the cold church with warmth. "When I was 13, I convinced my sister to help me steal a barrel of mead from the clan stores. We planned to drink it and become great warriors filled with liquid courage. Instead, we both got sick, threw up all over the chief's tent, and had to clean the entire camp's cooking pots for a month as punishment." Nathaniel found himself laughing too, imagining a young Kira attempting theft and failing spectacularly. "What did your sister say?" "She said it was my idea and I owed her," Kira said with a grin. "She was right. I did owe her. She could have told the truth and let me take all the punishment, but she stood with me. That is when I knew she was not just my sister, but my true companion. That is a good sister, Nathaniel said. The best, Kira agreed, her smile fading into something more wistful. I hope she knows I think of her. I hope she does not hate me for leaving. If she is anything like you, she understands, Nathaniel said. She might not agree, but she understands. Kira nodded, though she did not look entirely convinced. Outside, the wind continued to howl, but inside their small sanctuary, the fire kept the worst of the cold at bay. Nathaniel found himself growing drowsy, the warmth and the emotional intensity of the conversation taking their toll. "Tell me about your dreams," Kira said suddenly. "Not sleep dreams, but the kind you have for the future." Nathaniel blinked, trying to focus through his tiredness. "I want the farm to thrive. I want to have enough to eat with some leftover to sell or trade. I want to repair the barn properly, maybe add on to the house. I want to prove that it is possible to make a good life here, even as an outcast." "Those are practical dreams," Kira observed. "I am a practical person," Nathaniel said with a shrug. "What about you? What do you dream about?" Kira was quiet for a long moment. "I dream about being accepted. Not by everyone, that would be impossible, but maybe by a few people. I dream about having friends again, real friends who choose to spend time with me because they like me, not because they have to. I dream about proving that orcs can be more than what humans think we are. And I dream about having a family someday, children who will not have to be just orc or just human, but something new, something better." "Children," Nathaniel repeated, the word feeling heavy with implication. They had not discussed children, though logically it was a possibility. He knew that orcs and humans could have children together, though such offspring were rare and often faced even worse discrimination than their parents. "Is that something you want?" Kira asked carefully. "I know it is complicated. I want it," Nathaniel said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "Maybe not right away, we have enough to deal with right now, but yes, someday I would like to have children with you." "They will have a hard life," Kira warned. "Harder than either of us." "Maybe," Nathaniel agreed. "Or maybe by the time we have children, things will have changed. Maybe we will have built something good enough that they will have a place to belong." "That is optimistic," Kira said. "One of us has to be," Nathaniel pointed out. Kira leaned her head on his shoulder, and Nathaniel felt a sense of rightness settle over him. This was his wife, this fierce, complicated, beautiful person who had chosen to stand with him against a world that did not understand what they were building together. "Nathaniel," Kira said softly, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting." "All right," Nathaniel said, tensing slightly at her serious tone. "When I first came to your door, I was not just injured and starving. I was ready to die. I had walked for days with my wounds untreated, and I had given up. I thought exile meant the end of my life, and I was just looking for a place to lie down and let it be over. But then you opened your door, and instead of killing me or turning me away, you brought me inside. You cleaned my wounds and fed me and put me to bed in a safe place. And for the first time since I was cast out, I thought maybe dying was not the only option." Nathaniel's throat tightened as he listened. He had not realized how close she had been to the edge. "Over the next weeks, as I healed, I watched you," Kira continued. "I watched how you worked yourself to exhaustion every day trying to keep the farm going. I watched how you were kind to your animals, how you took time to repair things carefully instead of just making do. I watched how you read books in the evening, how you talked to yourself when you thought no one was listening, how you sometimes stood at the window and looked out at the land with this expression of determination mixed with fear. And I started to want to live again. Not just survive, but actually live." "Kira," Nathaniel started, but she squeezed his hand. "Let me finish," she said. "When you asked me to marry you, you said it was practical. You said it would help both of us, and it is true, it is practical. But I need you to know that I did not say yes because it was practical. I said yes because I wanted to spend my life with you, because you made me believe that life was worth living again, because when I think about the future now, you are in it. Always." Nathaniel found he could not speak for a moment, overwhelmed by the raw honesty in her words. When he finally found his voice, it came out rough and unsteady. "I am glad you lived. I am glad you came to my door. I am glad you said yes. And I promise you, Kira, I will spend every day trying to make you glad you chose to live, glad you chose me." "You already do," Kira said simply, "just by being who you are." They sat in silence after that, both lost in their own thoughts. The fire had burned down to embers again, and Nathaniel stirred himself to add more wood. As he did, he noticed that the wind outside seemed to have lessened slightly. The storm was still going, but perhaps the worst of it had passed. "You think we will be able to leave in the morning?" Kira asked. "Maybe," Nathaniel said. "Depends on how much snow has fallen. We might have to dig our way out." "I am good at digging," Kira said with a slight smile. "I know you are," Nathaniel agreed, settling back down beside her. "You dug out the whole root cellar in a single day." "It needed to be done," Kira said with a shrug, "and I like to keep busy." "You do," Nathaniel agreed. "Sometimes I think you work harder than me." "I want to earn my place," Kira admitted. "I want you to know that I am worth the trouble I have caused you." "You do not have to earn anything," Nathaniel said firmly. "You are my wife. This is your place by right, not by work." "Words are easy," Kira said. "Work is proof." "You do not have to prove anything to me," Nathaniel insisted. "I already know your worth." Kira looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "You say that now. But what about when things get harder? What about when your neighbor's hostility turns to violence? What about when you realize that being married to me means never being fully accepted by your own people again? Will you still think I am worth it then?" "Yes," Nathaniel said without hesitation, "because my life is better with you in it, happier, fuller, more meaningful. Whatever the cost, whatever comes, that will still be true." "You cannot know that," Kira said, but there was hope in her voice. "I can," Nathaniel insisted. "Because I know myself, and I know what matters to me. You matter to me, Kira. More than acceptance from people who would judge me for choosing love over prejudice. More than the approval of neighbors who would rather I be miserable and alone than happy with you. More than anything else." "Love," Kira repeated, her voice soft. "You said love." Nathaniel realized what he had said and felt his face heat. They had never used that word before, had danced around it in their practical discussions of marriage and partnership. But it was true, he realized. He loved her. He had probably loved her for weeks now, maybe months, but had been too cautious to name it. "Yes," he said, meeting her eyes. "Love. I love you, Kira. I should have said it before. I should have said it when I asked you to marry me, but I was afraid. Afraid you would think I was foolish, or that I was rushing things, or that I was confusing gratitude with something deeper. But it is not confusion. I love you." Kira's eyes were very bright, and she blinked rapidly. "Nathaniel Harper, you are the bravest, kindest, most stubborn man I have ever met. And I love you too. I have loved you since the day you spent 6 hours teaching me to read, even though you had a dozen other things you needed to do. I have loved you since the morning I found you singing to the chickens because you thought I was still asleep. I have loved you since you asked me to marry you with your hands shaking and your voice breaking because you were so nervous. I love you." Nathaniel reached out and cupped her face in his hands, his pale fingers against her green skin. "We are a mess, aren't we? Two outcasts huddled in a freezing church on our wedding night, figuring out how to say we love each other." "The best kind of mess," Kira said, and then she closed the distance between them and kissed him. Her lips were warm and soft despite the tusks, and Nathaniel felt like something in his chest cracked open, releasing feelings he had kept carefully contained. He kissed her back, tentative at first and then with growing confidence. This was his wife, his partner, his choice. And she was choosing him right back. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Kira rested her forehead against his again in that gesture of orc intimacy. "Thank you for sealing the church doors," she whispered. "Thank you for this night. I know it is not what we planned, but I think I will remember it forever." "I will too," Nathaniel said. "This night when we finally said what we have been feeling. This night when we stopped being careful and started being honest." "We should probably try to sleep," Kira said reluctantly. "Morning will come whether we are ready or not." "Probably," Nathaniel agreed, but neither of them moved. They stayed pressed together, sharing warmth and breath, and the knowledge that they had crossed some invisible threshold into deeper waters. Eventually, though, exhaustion caught up with them. They arranged the blankets into a makeshift bed near the fire, lying down together for the first time as a married couple. Kira's arms were strong around him, her body warm against his back. Nathaniel felt safer than he had in months, maybe years. "Kira," he said quietly into the darkness. "What happens now? After we leave here in the morning, we go home," Kira said simply. "We work the farm, we survive the winter. We build our life together one day at a time." "That's simple?" Nathaniel asked. "That's simple," Kira confirmed. "And that complicated. But we will figure it out together." "Together," Nathaniel echoed, and the word felt like a promise. They drifted off to sleep like that, wrapped in each other and in blankets, the fire burning low but steady. The storm continued outside, but inside they were warm and safe and together. Nathaniel woke some time later to find the fire had burned down to nothing but glowing coals. The church was bitterly cold, and even Kira's warmth was not enough to completely fight it off. He carefully extracted himself from her arms and added more wood to the fire, coaxing flames back to life. As he worked, he noticed that the wind had died down significantly. Dawn was not far off, he could tell from the quality of the darkness. Kira stirred behind him. "What time is it?" "Near morning, I think," Nathaniel said. "The storm has mostly passed." Kira sat up, the blankets falling away from her shoulders. Even in the dim firelight she looked beautiful, her black hair tousled and her amber eyes still soft with sleep. "Then we should prepare to leave soon." "Probably," Nathaniel agreed, but he found himself reluctant to end this strange, intimate night. "But maybe not quite yet." Kira smiled, understanding in her expression. "Come back here then. We have a little more time before we have to face the world again." Nathaniel returned to their makeshift bed and Kira pulled him close. They lay together watching the fire grow stronger, neither speaking but both thinking. "Are you afraid?" Kira asked eventually. "Of what comes next?" "A little," Nathaniel admitted, "but mostly I am hopeful. We have each other now. Really have each other, not just in a practical sense, but in every sense. That has to count for something." "It counts for everything," Kira said. "At least to me." "To me too," Nathaniel said. He turned in her arms so they were face to face. "Kira, I need you to promise me something." "What?" she asked, her expression cautious. "Promise me that if things get too hard, if the prejudice and the isolation become too much, you will tell me. You will not just suffer in silence. You will let me know so we can figure out a solution together." Kira considered this. "Only if you promise me the same thing. You have a tendency to shoulder burdens alone, Nathaniel Harper. I have watched you do it, but we are partners now. Your burdens are my burdens." "Deal," Nathaniel said, and they shook hands solemnly, then both laughed at the formality of the gesture. As the laughter faded, Nathaniel found himself studying Kira's face, memorizing the details of it. The way her tusks curved slightly upward, the golden flecks in her amber eyes, the small scar on her left cheek that she had never explained, the strength in her jaw and the surprising softness of her lips. "What are you thinking?" Kira asked. "That I am lucky," Nathaniel said honestly. "That against all odds I found someone who makes me want to be better than I am. Someone who challenges me and supports me and chooses me despite all the very good reasons not to. I am thinking that I am the luckiest man alive." "Even trapped in a freezing church on your wedding night?" Kira asked with amusement. "Especially then," Nathaniel said, "because it gave us this time. Time to really talk, to really see each other. How many couples get that on their wedding night? How many people really know the person they marry?" "Not enough," Kira agreed. "Most orc marriages are arranged by clan leaders for strategic purposes. Love, if it comes at all, comes later. Sometimes it never comes. And human marriages are often based on dowries and land and family connections," Nathaniel said. "Real affection is a bonus, not a requirement." "So perhaps we are lucky after all," Kira said. "We chose each other freely, without pressure from families or clans. We chose based on who we are, not what we could offer." "Although you offer a lot," Nathaniel pointed out, "you are strong and capable and hard-working. And you offer warmth and kindness and a place to belong," Kira countered. "We both bring things to this marriage." "True," Nathaniel agreed. "But more than that, we bring ourselves, our whole, complicated, messy selves, and somehow that is enough." "More than enough," Kira said softly. She leaned in and kissed him again. Slow and sweet this time, without the urgency of their first kiss but with something deeper. Something that felt like commitment and choice and love all tangled together. When they separated, the quality of light filtering through the gaps in the walls had changed. Morning was definitely coming. Soon they would have to face the aftermath of the storm, dig their way out of the church, and make their way back to the farm. Soon they would have to deal with the reality of their marriage and what it meant for their future. But for now, they had a few more precious moments to themselves. "Tell me something," Nathaniel said. "Something I do not know about you." Kira thought for a moment. "I am afraid of deep water. When I was young, I fell into a river and nearly drowned. Since then, I have never been comfortable in water deeper than my waist." "I did not know that," Nathaniel said. "There is a pond on the property. I will make sure you feel safe around it." "What about you?" Kira asked. "Tell me something I do not know." Nathaniel hesitated, then decided to share something he had never told anyone. "Sometimes at night I lie awake and wonder if I am enough. If I am strong enough, smart enough, good enough to make the farm succeed, to build the life I want. I am afraid of failing, of proving all the people who doubt me right." "You are enough," Kira said firmly. "You are more than enough. And you are not alone anymore. Whatever comes, we will face it together, and that makes us both stronger." "You really believe that?" Nathaniel asked. "I know it," Kira said. "I have seen what we can do together. We brought in the harvest when everyone said we would fail. We repaired the barn when everyone said it should be torn down. We have already done impossible things, Nathaniel. Everything else is just more of the same." Her confidence was infectious, and Nathaniel felt his own doubt receding. She was right. They had already overcome so much. They could overcome whatever came next. Outside, the first rays of sunlight began to break through the clouds. The storm was truly over now, leaving behind a world transformed by snow. Nathaniel stood and helped Kira to her feet. Together they went to the doors and lifted the bar. The doors opened onto a landscape of white. Snow had drifted against the church, piling up to nearly 3 feet in places. But the sky was clear now, brilliant blue with the promise of a cold but beautiful day. Their footprints from the night before had been completely erased, leaving no trace of their desperate run to shelter. "It is beautiful," Kira said, her breath misting in the cold air. "It is," Nathaniel agreed. "But we should start moving. It will take us a while to get home through this." They gathered their few possessions and stepped out into the snow. It was hard going, the drifts sometimes reaching past Kira's knees despite her height. But they pressed on, taking turns breaking trail, helping each other over difficult spots. As they walked, the sun rose higher, turning the snow into a field of diamonds. Everything looked clean and new, transformed by the storm into something beautiful and strange. Nathaniel found himself thinking that it was appropriate somehow. They had gone into the church as two people making a practical arrangement, and they were leaving as husband and wife who loved each other. Like the land, they had been transformed by the long night. "Look," Kira said, pointing ahead. Smoke rose from the chimney of their farmhouse, visible in the distance. Nathaniel felt a surge of relief. The house was still standing, undamaged by the storm. Home was waiting for them. They increased their pace, eager now to reach shelter and warmth. As they approached the farm, Nathaniel noticed that one of the fences had been knocked down by the wind, and several branches from the old oak tree had fallen. There would be work to do, repairs to make, but that was fine. Work they could handle, work they knew. They entered the house together, and Nathaniel immediately went to stoke the fire while Kira checked on their food stores. Everything was as they had left it, safe and secure. Nathaniel felt gratitude wash over him. They had a home. They had each other. They had a future. "Nathaniel," Kira called from the kitchen. "Come here." He went to find her standing by the table looking at something. As he approached, he saw what had caught her attention. A basket sat on the table, filled with bread and cheese and dried meat. A note was tucked into the side. Nathaniel picked up the note and read it aloud. "For the newlyweds, may you find warmth and happiness, from a friend." "Old Thomas," Kira said softly. "It must have been him. He is the only one who knew we were getting married yesterday." "He must have come by during the storm," Nathaniel said, touched by the gesture. "Left this for us to find when we got back." "Not everyone hates us then," Kira said, and there was hope in her voice. "No," Nathaniel agreed. "Not everyone, and maybe that is enough. Maybe one friend is enough to start building something new." Kira moved to stand beside him, looking down at the basket. "It is a good gift, practical, the kind of gift you give people you think will need it." "Probably true," Nathaniel said. "But also the kind of gift you give people you care about. He wanted us to have something to come home to." "Then we should honor that," Kira said. She began unpacking the basket, setting out the food on the table. "We should eat and rest and then start on those repairs. The fence needs fixing before the animals get out." "Always practical," Nathaniel said with affection. "One of us has to be," Kira replied, then smiled at him. "Although I think we were both fairly impractical last night, spending our wedding night talking instead of sleeping." "Best decision we ever made," Nathaniel said, "other than deciding to get married in the first place." "That too," Kira agreed. She moved to the fireplace and began preparing tea, her movements efficient and familiar. Nathaniel watched her, marveling at how naturally she fit into this space that had once been his alone. She belonged here now. This was her home as much as his. They ate breakfast in comfortable silence, both tired from the long night and the difficult walk home. When they finished, Nathaniel started to stand to begin the work of the day, but Kira put a hand on his arm. "Wait," she said. "Before we start working, I want to say something." Nathaniel settled back into his chair. "All right." Kira took a breath, clearly gathering her thoughts. "Last night in the church, we said things that I think we both needed to say. We were honest with each other in a way we have not been before. I want to continue that. I want our marriage to be built on honesty, even when it is hard, even when the truth is uncomfortable." Can we agree to that? Yes, Nathaniel said without hesitation. Honesty, always. And patience, Kira continued. We come from different cultures. We will misunderstand each other sometimes. We will make mistakes. I want to promise that I will try to be patient with you, and I need you to promise to be patient with me. I promise, Nathaniel said. What else? Partnership, Kira said. True partnership. Not me working for you or you protecting me, but both of us working together as equals. Your decisions are my decisions. My burdens are your burdens. Everything we do together. I agree to that too, Nathaniel said. Anything else? Kira smiled. Love. We have said we love each other, but I want to make it a promise. I promise to love you, Nathaniel Harper. To choose you every day. To stand beside you against whatever comes. To be your partner and your friend and your wife in every sense of those words. That is my vow to you. Nathaniel felt emotion clog his throat. They had said vows in the church yesterday, but those had been the traditional words, formal and impersonal. These vows were theirs alone, forged in a night of honesty and discovery. I promise those same things to you, Kira, he said, his voice rough. I promise honesty and patience and partnership and love. I promise to see you as you are, not as what others think you should be. I promise to build a life with you that honors both of us, our differences and our similarities. I promise to choose you, today and every day after. That is my vow to you. Kira reached across the table and took both his hands in hers. Then we are truly married now, not just in the eyes of the law, but in our own eyes. This is our real wedding, here in our kitchen with no one watching but each other. I like that, Nathaniel said. A wedding just for us. They stood together and kissed, sealing their new vows. When they separated, both were smiling despite the tiredness pulling at them. Now we can start the work, Kira said. Now we can begin our life together properly. They spent the rest of the day working on the repairs. The fence took several hours to fix, the cold making the work harder than it would have been otherwise. But they labored side by side, Kira holding posts while Nathaniel hammered them in place, then switching roles when his arms grew tired. They cleared fallen branches and checked on the animals, making sure everyone had survived the storm unharmed. As the sun began to set, they returned to the house, exhausted but satisfied. They had accomplished everything that needed doing. The farm was secure for the night. They prepared a simple dinner together, moving around the small kitchen in an unconscious dance of coordination. After they ate, they sat by the fire, neither wanting to move just yet. Nathaniel found his eyes growing heavy, the lack of sleep from the previous night catching up with him. You should go to bed, Kira said softly. You can barely keep your eyes open. You must be tired too, Nathaniel said. I am, Kira admitted, but I want to sit here a little longer. I want to savor this feeling. What feeling? Nathaniel asked. Home, Kira said simply. This is the first time in my life I have truly felt like I belong somewhere. I want to hold on to it. Nathaniel understood. He stood and held out his hand. Then let us go to bed together. We can savor it there just as well as here. Kira took his hand and let him lead her to the bedroom. They changed into night clothes and climbed into bed, the same bed they had slept in separately the night before their wedding. But tonight was different. Tonight they lay together, wrapped in each other's arms, husband and wife in truth as well as name. Nathaniel, Kira murmured sleepily. Thank you for the church. Thank you for the storm. Thank you for the time it gave us. Thank you for being brave enough to talk to me, Nathaniel replied. Thank you for trusting me with your past and your feelings and your heart. Always, Kira promised. Always. They drifted off to sleep like that, exhausted and happy and home. Outside, the snow lay thick on the ground, covering the world in white. But inside, the fire burned warm and steady, and two people who had found each other against all odds slept peacefully in each other's arms. The next morning brought the reality of their new life into sharp focus. Nathaniel woke to find Kira already up and dressed, standing at the window looking out at something. He joined her and saw what had captured her attention. Three men stood at the edge of their property, watching the house but not approaching. "Who are they?" Kira asked quietly. "Neighbors," Nathaniel said, recognizing the figures. "Peters and his sons. They farm the land to the east." "What do they want?" Kira asked, tension in her voice. "I do not know," Nathaniel admitted. "But we should find out. They might need help, or they might be here to deliver a message." They dressed quickly and went outside together. The three men watched them approach, their expressions hard to read. Nathaniel felt Kira's hand brush against his, and he took it, holding tight as they walked through the snow. "Peters," Nathaniel said when they were close enough. "Can I help you?" The older man looked at Nathaniel, then at Kira, then back to Nathaniel. "Heard you got married 2 days ago." "Heard the storm caught you at the old church." "That is true," Nathaniel said carefully. "We made it home yesterday." Peters nodded slowly. "Also heard you married an orc. That true too?" "Yes," Nathaniel said firmly. "This is my wife, Kira." "Kira, this is Mr. Peters and his sons, John and Michael." Kira inclined her head respectfully but did not speak. Nathaniel could feel the tension radiating from her. Peters was quiet for a long moment, chewing on something, probably tobacco. Then he spat into the snow and looked directly at Kira. "You help him bring in the harvest last fall?" Kira blinked, clearly surprised by the question. "Yes, I did." "Thought so," Peters said. "Saw you working from the road sometimes. You work hard, I will give you that. Harder than some human women I know." "Thank you," Kira said, uncertainty in her voice. Peters turned back to Nathaniel. "Look, Harper, I will be straight with you. I do not understand what you are doing. Marrying an orc goes against everything I was taught. Everything most folk around here believe. But I also remember your father. He was a good man, helped me out more than once when times were hard. And I figure his son deserves the same chance I gave him, which is the chance to prove himself by his actions, not my assumptions." Nathaniel felt hope kindle in his chest. "What are you saying, Mr. Peters?" "I am saying my fence line also came down in the storm," Peters said. "And I am not as young as I used to be. I could use a hand repairing it. If you and your wife have time, I would pay fair wages for fair work." "You want to hire us?" Nathaniel asked, hardly believing what he was hearing. "I want help with my fence," Peters said gruffly. "Whether it comes from you or someone else makes no difference to me. But you are closest, and I know you need the money, so if you want the work, it is yours." Nathaniel looked at Kira and she nodded slightly. "We would be happy to help," he said. "When do you need us?" "Tomorrow morning, if you can manage it," Peters said. "Storm did a number on the whole north fence line, going to take at least a week to repair properly." "We will be there," Nathaniel promised. Peters nodded and turned to go, his sons following. But then he paused and looked back. "Harper, I still do not understand your choice, but I respect that you are standing by it. That counts for something." With that, the three men trudged back through the snow toward their own land. Nathaniel and Kira stood watching them go, both stunned by the interaction. "Did that really just happen?" Kira asked. "I think so," Nathaniel said slowly. "I think we just got our first job as a married couple." "He called me your wife," Kira said, wonder in her voice. "Not your orc, not your worker, your wife." "You are my wife," Nathaniel said, pulling her close. "And apparently some people are willing to acknowledge that, even if they do not fully understand it." "One person," Kira said. "One family." "It is a start," Nathaniel said. "One more than we had yesterday." They went back inside, both feeling lighter than they had in weeks. Work was work, but it was also acceptance of a sort, an acknowledgement that they existed as a unit, a married couple. It was more than they had dared hope for. Over the next week, they worked on Peter's fence, and Nathaniel watched as something surprising happened. Peter's sons, who had been silent and suspicious at first, gradually began to talk to Kira. They asked her questions about her strength, about orc building techniques, about her life before the farm. And Kira, cautious but willing, answered them honestly. By the end of the week, when Peters paid them with both coin and a sack of grain, the atmosphere had thawed considerably. John, the younger son, even made a joke that made Kira laugh, her tusks flashing in the winter sun. It was a small thing, but it felt monumental. As they walked home that evening, Kira was quieter than usual. Nathaniel let her have her silence, understanding that she was processing something. Finally, as their house came into view, she spoke. "I did not think it would be possible," she said, "to be accepted even a little bit. I thought we would always be completely alone." "We are not alone," Nathaniel said. "We have old Thomas. We have the Peters family now, maybe. That is two. Two is enough to build on. Two is more than I ever expected," Kira admitted. "When I was cast out from my clan, I thought I would never belong anywhere again. But I am starting to think maybe I was wrong. Maybe belonging is not about being part of a large group. Maybe it is about finding a few people who choose to stand with you." "I think you are right," Nathaniel said, "and I will always choose to stand with you." "I know," Kira said, and she smiled at him, that rare, genuine smile that made his heart race. "That is what makes this work. That is what makes this home." They entered the house together, and as Nathaniel closed the door behind them, he felt a sense of profound gratitude. They had challenges ahead, certainly. Not everyone would be as willing to give them a chance as Peters had been. But they had each other, and that was the foundation everything else could be built on. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, Kira suddenly stopped what she was doing and turned to Nathaniel. "Do you remember what we talked about in the church? About dreams?" "I remember," Nathaniel said. "I have a new dream," Kira said. "I dream that someday, maybe years from now, we will be able to walk through the market without people staring. I dream that our children, if we have them, will have friends who do not care that they are half-orc. I dream that what we are building here, this life together, becomes normal enough that people stop seeing it as strange." "Is that foolish?" "No," Nathaniel said firmly. "That is not foolish. That is hope, and hope is what keeps us going." "Then I will keep hoping," Kira said, "and working. And loving you. Because those are the things I know how to do." "Those are the only things that matter," Nathaniel said. He crossed the kitchen and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "We are going to be all right, Kira. More than all right. We are going to build something good here. Something that lasts. I believe that." "So do I," Kira murmured against his shoulder. "So do I." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in their warm kitchen while the winter wind howled outside. The storm that had sealed the church doors on their wedding night seemed like a lifetime ago now, though it had been less than 2 weeks. So much had changed. They had changed. In the months that followed, they continued to work hard on the farm and to take on jobs from neighbors when they were offered. Peters recommended them to another farmer, who hired them to help with a building project. That farmer recommended them to someone else. Slowly, gradually, they built a reputation as reliable workers who delivered quality results. It was not acceptance, not exactly, but it was tolerance, and that was its own kind of progress. Spring came, and with it the planting season. Nathaniel and Kira worked side by side in the fields, turning soil and planting seeds. They worked from dawn until dusk, exhausted but satisfied. Old Thomas came by one day to check on them, bringing fresh eggs and news from the settlement. "There is talk about you too," he said as they sat on the porch sharing tea. "Some good, some bad, but mostly people are just confused. They do not know what to make of a human and an orc living peacefully together." "What do they expect?" Kira asked. "Fighting? Drama?" "Probably," Thomas admitted. "Instead, they see a farm being worked and maintained. They see a couple who seem content with each other. It does not fit their expectations, and that makes them uncomfortable." "Let them be uncomfortable," Nathaniel said. "We are not living our lives for their comfort." "Good," Thomas said with a nod of approval. "That is the right attitude. Keep doing what you are doing. Eventually, people will get used to the idea of you two, or they will not, but either way, you will still be here, still working, still together." His words proved prophetic. As summer turned to fall, and they brought in their first full harvest as a married couple, Nathaniel noticed that fewer people stared when they went to the settlement to trade. The hostility was still there, simmering under the surface, but it had been joined by something else, a grudging acknowledgement that they were part of the community whether anyone liked it or not. One day in late fall, as they were loading their cart with supplies for winter, a woman approached them. Nathaniel recognized her as Mrs. Chen, a widow who ran a small trading post. She had always been polite but distant, never openly hostile but never welcoming either. "Mr. Harper," she said. "Mrs. Harper." Kira's head jerked up at being addressed as Mrs. Harper, surprise clear on her face. "Mrs. Chen," Nathaniel said cautiously. "Can we help you?" "I hope so," Mrs. Chen said. "My roof has a leak and I need someone to fix it before the winter storms come. I heard you two do good work." "Would you be willing to take the job?" "Of course," Nathaniel said, trying to keep the eagerness out of his voice. "When would you like us to start?" "Tomorrow, if possible," Mrs. Chen said. "I will pay standard rates." "We will be there," Nathaniel promised. "Mrs. Chen nodded and turned to go, but then she paused, just as Peters had months ago. "Mrs. Harper," she said, addressing Kira directly, "I heard you make excellent preserves. I wonder if you would consider trading some for supplies at my store. My customers might appreciate the variety." Kira looked stunned. "You want to sell my preserves? If they are as good as I have heard, yes," Mrs. Chen said. "I am running a business, not a charity. I sell things people want to buy. If your preserves are good, people will buy them." "They are good," Nathaniel said firmly. "She uses my mother's recipes but makes them her own." "Then bring some by when you come to fix the roof," Mrs. Chen said. "We will discuss terms." She left, and Nathaniel and Kira stood staring at each other in amazement. "She wants to sell my preserves," Kira repeated, as if saying it out loud would make it more real. "She does," Nathaniel confirmed. "You are becoming a businesswoman." "I am becoming part of the community," Kira said slowly. "Really part of it, not just tolerated but integrated. People are buying things I make. That is acceptance." "That is progress," Nathaniel agreed. "Not full acceptance, not yet, but progress." Kira looked at him, her amber eyes bright with emotion. "This is because of you, because you stood by me, because you made it impossible for people to ignore me. You gave me a place to stand, and from that place I can reach out to others." "We did this together," Nathaniel corrected. "You worked hard. You proved yourself. I just gave you the opportunity. You did the rest." That night, they celebrated with a special dinner, using some of their preserved food and the fresh bread Mrs. Chen had given them as a deposit for the roof work. As they ate, Nathaniel found himself thinking about that night in the church, the night the snow had sealed the doors and forced them to talk until sunrise. That night had been a turning point, the moment they had stopped being two people making a practical arrangement and become a real married couple. Everything they had built since then had grown from the honesty and vulnerability of those hours spent talking in the cold. The farm was thriving, they had steady work. They were slowly being accepted by at least some of the community, and most importantly, they loved each other more deeply than Nathaniel had thought possible. "What are you thinking about?" Kira asked, noticing his distant expression. "The church," Nathaniel said, "our wedding night." "That was a good night," Kira said softly. "Strange and cold and not at all what we planned, but good." "The best night of my life," Nathaniel said, "because it was the night I stopped being afraid to love you. The night we both stopped being afraid." "I am still afraid sometimes," Kira admitted. "Afraid that this will all disappear. Afraid that I will wake up and find it was all a dream." "It is not a dream," Nathaniel said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "This is real. We are real. And we are building something that will last." "How can you be so sure?" Kira asked. "Because I know us," Nathaniel said. "I know how hard we work. I know how much we care about each other and about this life we are building. I know that we face problems together and solve them together. That kind of partnership, that kind of love does not just disappear. It gets stronger with time." Kira squeezed his hand, her grip strong and warm. "I love you, Nathaniel Harper. I loved you that night in the church, and I love you now, and I will love you tomorrow and every day after that." "I love you too," Nathaniel said. "Always." They finished their meal and cleaned up together, then sat by the fire as they did most evenings. Kira was working on mending clothes while Nathaniel read aloud from a book, something they had started doing after she learned to read and discovered she enjoyed stories. It was peaceful, domestic, and perfect. As winter set in again, bringing with it cold and snow, Nathaniel and Kira settled into a comfortable rhythm. They worked on repairs and projects during the short days, spent long evenings by the fire talking and planning and dreaming, and slept wrapped in each other's arms every night. More jobs came their way, more people began to acknowledge them, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, they became part of the fabric of the community. One evening in late winter, almost exactly a year after their wedding, Kira made an announcement that changed everything. "Nathaniel," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "I need to tell you something." He looked up from his book, immediately alert to the serious tone in her voice. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "No," Kira said quickly. "Nothing is wrong, at least I do not think it is wrong. But it is significant." "Tell me," Nathaniel said, setting aside the book and giving her his full attention. Kira took a deep breath. "I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Nathaniel could not process what she had said. Then the meaning hit him, and he felt joy flood through his entire body. "A baby. We are having a baby." "Yes," Kira said, and now he could see the mixture of excitement and fear in her eyes. "I am about 2 months along, I think. I wanted to be sure before I told you." Nathaniel crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her as tightly as he dared. "This is wonderful. This is amazing. We are going to be parents." "We are," Kira agreed, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "Are you happy? Really happy?" "I am thrilled," Nathaniel said, pulling back to look at her face. "Why would you think I would not be?" "Because it complicates things," Kira said. "A half-orc child will face even more prejudice than I do. People who have started to accept us might turn away again when they see we have a child. And I am afraid, Nathaniel. I am afraid I will not be a good mother. I do not know how to raise a child in a world that will hate them for existing." "Hey," Nathaniel said gently, cupping her face in his hands. "Listen to me. You are going to be an amazing mother. You are strong and kind and brave, and you will teach our child to be all those things too. And yes, our child will face challenges. But they will also have something precious. They will have 2 parents who love them completely and who will fight for them against anyone or anything that tries to hurt them. That is more than many children have." "You really believe that?" Kira asked, tears gleaming in her eyes. "I know it," Nathaniel said. "We have already proven that we can build something good against all odds. We did it with our marriage, with our farm, with our place in this community. We will do it with our child too, together." Kira let out a shaky laugh. "Together." "I am starting to really believe in that word." "Good," Nathaniel said, "because it is the most important word we have." They spent the rest of the evening talking about the future, making plans, discussing fears and hopes and dreams. It was like that night in the church all over again. Except now they were in their own home, warm and safe, talking about the life they were creating literally as well as figuratively. As Nathaniel lay in bed that night, Kira asleep beside him with his hand resting on her still flat belly, he thought about the journey that had brought them here. From desperate strangers to cautious housemates to husband and wife to soon-to-be parents. It had been less than 2 years, but it felt like a lifetime. He had changed so much, learned so much, grown so much. And all of it because one day he had made the choice to open his door to someone who needed help, regardless of what others might think. The next morning they told old Thomas the news. He was the only person they fully trusted, the only one who had supported them from the beginning. Thomas listened to their announcement, then broke into a wide smile. "Well, that is something," he said. "A new generation. Someone who will grow up knowing that humans and orcs can live together peacefully. That is important." "It is also terrifying," Kira admitted. "This child will be different from everyone around them, neither fully human nor fully orc." "Maybe that is a good thing," Thomas said thoughtfully. "Maybe someone who belongs to both worlds can help bridge them, build understanding where there was none before." "That is a lot of pressure to put on a child," Nathaniel said. "Then do not put that pressure on them," Thomas advised. "Just raise them to be a good person. Kind, strong, honest. The rest will follow naturally." His words made sense, and Nathaniel felt some of his worry ease. They did not need to solve all the world's problems through their child. They just needed to raise a good human being and give them the tools to navigate the world. As Kira's pregnancy progressed, something unexpected happened. The women of the community, perhaps moved by some universal maternal instinct, began to soften toward her. Mrs. Chen brought by baby clothes her own children had outgrown. Another woman, Mrs. Thompson, stopped by with advice about pregnancy and childbirth. Even women who had previously avoided Kira completely started to nod politely when they passed in the settlement. It was not universal acceptance. There were still plenty of people who made their disapproval clear, but it was more than they had hoped for. The baby was not even born yet, and already it was changing things, forcing people to see Kira not as an abstract concept of an orc, but as a woman, a mother-to-be, someone they could relate to on a human level. Nathaniel watched these changes with amazement and hope. Maybe their child would not face as much hostility as they had feared. Maybe by the time the baby was old enough to understand rejection, the community would have evolved enough to accept them. It was a fragile hope, but it was hope nonetheless. Kira gave birth in early summer, during a night of soft rain and distant thunder. The labor was long and difficult, and Nathaniel spent hours holding her hand, wiping her forehead, murmuring encouragement. Mrs. Chen and Mrs. Thompson were there too, helping with the practical aspects of childbirth that Nathaniel had no knowledge of. When the baby finally came, crying lustily and waving tiny fists, Nathaniel felt his heart expand in a way he had never experienced before. He was a father. This small, perfect creature was his child, his and Kira's, created from their love and their choice to build a life together. "It's a boy," Mrs. Chen announced, cleaning the baby efficiently and wrapping him in soft cloth. "A healthy boy." She placed the baby in Kira's arms, and Nathaniel watched as his wife looked down at their son with an expression of such pure love that it brought tears to his eyes. The baby had Kira's green skin, though a lighter shade, and tiny tusks were already visible. His ears were pointed like his mother's, but his eyes, when they fluttered open, were blue like Nathaniel's. "He is beautiful," Kira whispered. "Perfect." "He is," Nathaniel agreed, sitting beside them on the bed and reaching out to touch his son's tiny hand. The baby's fingers wrapped around his automatically, and Nathaniel felt something fundamental shift inside him. This was his family. This was what he would protect and nurture for the rest of his life. "What will you name him?" Mrs. Thompson asked. Nathaniel and Kira looked at each other, having discussed this many times over the past months. They had decided to give their child a name that worked in both human and orc cultures, something strong and meaningful. "Nathan," Kira said. "His name is Nathan." "After his father, but his own person too." "Nathan Harper," Nathaniel said, testing the name. "It fits him." Mrs. Chen and Mrs. Thompson stayed for a while longer, making sure both mother and baby were stable and comfortable. When they finally left, promising to check in the next day, Nathaniel and Kira were alone with their son for the first time. "I am afraid to sleep," Kira admitted. "Afraid if I close my eyes, something will happen to him." "I will watch," Nathaniel said. "You sleep. You have earned it." Kira wanted to argue, he could see it in her eyes, but exhaustion won out. She fell asleep with Nathan still cradled in her arms, and Nathaniel sat beside them, keeping watch. He studied his son's face, memorizing every detail. This was the child whose future they had worried about, whose existence they had debated. But now that he was here, real and solid and perfect, all those worries seemed distant. They would protect him. They would give him the best life they possibly could. That was all any parent could do. As dawn broke and light filtered through the window, Nathan began to fuss. Kira woke immediately, her instincts already attuned to her baby's needs. She fed him, and Nathaniel watched the simple, beautiful act of mother and child, feeling his heart swell with love for both of them. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" Kira asked, not taking her eyes off Nathan. "For this. For him. For choosing to build this life with me. For being brave enough to have a child even though you were afraid. For everything." Kira looked up at him then, her amber eyes soft. "I should be thanking you. You gave me a home when I had none. You gave me love when I thought I would never have it. You gave me hope for a future I thought was impossible. And now you have given me this beautiful child. I am the one who should be grateful." "Then we will both be grateful," Nathaniel said. "Together." "Together," Kira agreed and smiled. The next weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and constant feeding and learning how to care for a newborn. Nathan was a demanding baby, crying often and sleeping in short bursts. But he was also alert and curious, his blue eyes tracking movement and his tiny hands reaching for anything within grasp. Nathaniel fell more in love with his son every day. The community's reaction to Nathan was mixed. Some people made their disapproval clear, calling him an abomination and worse. But others, perhaps moved by the sight of a baby, were kinder. Children especially seemed unconcerned with Nathan's mixed heritage, fascinated by his green skin and tiny tusks. Nathaniel saw in those children the seeds of a more accepting future. Old Thomas was a frequent visitor, bringing gifts and sitting for hours just watching Nathan sleep. "He is something special, this one," Thomas said one afternoon. "You can see the intelligence in his eyes already. He is going to grow up strong and smart." "I hope so," Nathaniel said. "I hope we can give him what he needs." "You will," Thomas said with confidence. "You two have already done the impossible. Raising a child will be easy in comparison." Nathaniel laughed. "Somehow I doubt that." Well, maybe not easy, Thomas admitted. But you will do it together, and that makes all the difference. As Nathan grew from a newborn into an infant, Nathaniel and Kira settled into parenthood. It was exhausting and challenging and sometimes frustrating, but it was also filled with moments of pure joy. Nathan's first smile, directed at his mother. His first laugh, drawn out by his father's silly faces. The way he would reach for both of them, wanting to be held and cuddled. Every milestone felt like a miracle. One evening, when Nathan was about 6 months old and sleeping peacefully in his cradle, Kira and Nathaniel sat by the fire together, enjoying a rare moment of quiet. "You remember that night in the church?" Kira asked suddenly. "I think about it often," Nathaniel admitted. "It feels like the night everything really began for us." "It was," Kira said. "That was the night I stopped being afraid to love you, the night we became partners in truth, not just in name. Everything good in my life now traces back to that night." "Mine too," Nathaniel said. "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if the storm had not come. If we had just gone home after the ceremony and continued being polite strangers who happened to be married. We might have eventually found our way to where we are now, but it would have taken so much longer. The storm forced us to be honest with each other." "Then I am grateful for that storm," Kira said. "For the snow that sealed the doors and trapped us together. For the cold that made us huddle close. For the long night that made us talk until sunrise. All of it led us here." "Here," Nathaniel repeated, looking around their small home, at the fire burning warm and steady, at the cradle where their son slept, at his wife, his partner, his love. "Here is pretty good." "Here is everything," Kira corrected. "Here is home and family and love. Here is the life we chose and built together. Here is perfect." Nathaniel could not argue with that. Against all odds, despite prejudice and isolation and countless challenges, they had built something remarkable. A home, a family, a future. And it had all started with a choice to be kind, to be open, to be brave enough to love someone different. Nathan stirred in his cradle, making soft baby noises but not waking. Both Nathaniel and Kira turned to look at him, their expressions matching mirrors of parental love and pride. "He is going to have a good life," Nathaniel said quietly. "We will make sure of it." "Yes," Kira agreed. "We will teach him to be strong and kind and true to himself. We will teach him that difference is not something to fear but something to celebrate. We will teach him that love is always worth fighting for, and we will teach him that home is not a place but the people you choose to stand with." "That is a lot to teach," Nathaniel said with a smile. "We have time," Kira said. "And we will do it together one day at a time, just like we have done everything else." "Together," Nathaniel echoed, pulling her close. "Always together." They sat like that as the fire burned low and night deepened around them. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from their choice to love. Outside, the world continued to turn, with all its prejudices and challenges and complications. But inside their small home, there was only warmth and peace and the quiet knowledge that they had everything they needed. Years later, when Nathan was old enough to ask questions, he would ask his parents about their wedding day. And they would tell him the truth, about the storm and the church, and the long night spent talking until sunrise. They would tell him about fear and hope, about prejudice and acceptance, about the power of choosing to stand with someone against a world that did not understand. And Nathan would understand that his very existence was proof that love could transcend boundaries, that different kinds of people could build beautiful things together, that the future was always more hopeful than the past. But that was years away. For now, Nathaniel and Kira simply held each other and watched their son sleep, grateful for every moment of the life they had built together. The snow had sealed the church doors on their wedding night and given them the time to fall truly in love. Everything else had followed naturally from that beginning, like a seed planted in good soil, growing and flourishing and bearing fruit beyond their wildest dreams. Outside, the summer stars shone bright and clear. Inside, a family slept peacefully, wrapped in love and warmth and the promise of tomorrow. It was not perfect, no life ever was, but it was theirs, built with their own hands and their own hearts, a testament to the power of choosing love over fear. And that, in the end, was all that mattered.